Before I introduce our keynote speaker today, I wanted to take this special moment to thank two special supporters of ours who have been with us for multiple years, and I really appreciate it. One is the Pierce County Regional Council, who have continued to be our supporter for multiple years now, and we truly appreciate that. And then a friend who has been a part of the construction of University of Washington, Tacoma, but also a supporter of the Urban Studies program, and that's Kurzmo Corporation. Kurzmo has been a significant part of what we do and the stuff we are able to do with you. I hope you have enjoyed this morning's conversation. As I mentioned to you, livability is something that is complex. We can't talk about all the dimensions of it. So hopefully there were enough here in terms of conversation. And I'm sure there will be stuff left out that we can address at other times, and we'll focus on those topics. There are a couple other people who I have not thanked, this is a moment for me to thank. One is Julia Smith, our administrator, who quietly in the background does a lot of the work that makes me look good, and that's one of the things that I have to say. Without Julia, it would be difficult for me to do the work I do. Also, Brianna Bales, who is not here, who has done a tremendous job of organizing the event site and also helping us with many of the details of this event. Urban Studies students, they are great members of our family. We are proud of them, and they help us with our events, so I want to thank them as well. And our faculty members, who are always my best friends and my best critic, and in some ways, they're the ones who tell me if I'm doing right, and they will gladly tell me when I'm not doing things so well. So thank you so much for all the support and everything you have done, and I want to thank you for being here. But this is the moment that allows me to introduce a great opportunity for me to introduce someone who has been with this topic that we have talked about this morning for multiple years and plays a very important role in terms of at the national level, but also at the local level, to bring various aspects of the built environment and the cultural institutions together. It is my distinct pleasure to introduce Jason Schupbach, Director of Design at the National Endowment for the Arts. This morning you heard a couple of plugs for NEA. It looks like NEA is involved in multiple locations. Jason currently manages the NEA's grant making for design and design initiatives, such as the Mayor's Institute on City Design, which I find quite fascinating, and it's a way for our leadership to understand how urban design works. And he also manages the category called Our Town, which provides funding in recognition of the role that the arts can play in economic revitalization and in creating livable, sustainable communities. I promised him I'm not going to read the rest of his bio because you have it in front of you. It is my distinct pleasure to invite Jason to come up and give us the keynote.
Thank you. Well, hi, everybody. Okay, that was super weak. Let's do that again. Hi, everybody. Hi. So, what's the NEA? Anybody know? But what are we? First time anybody's ever gotten in on a first thing. We are a federal agency. Wow, we are not an endowment. I'm here from the federal government, and I'm here to help. So I wanted to take today to tell you guys a story, and it's a story about us. It's a story about all of us, and kind of what happened to all of us after 2008, and really about the role of creativity in our lives. It's the story of, there we go. It's the story of nonprofits, for-profits, and government coming together to make better communities all across the country. It's the story of mayors, teachers, farmers, preachers, and transportation engineers using the arts to build better communities. Oh, did I skip over the arts part? Dang, sorry, this is a little funny. So, where did we start talking about us? Remember 2008? That was a lot of fun, wasn't it? Remember when there's like a couple nitwits at some banks brought down the world economy? That was great. So what was the problem in 2008? What was the primary problem? Agreed, that's, yeah. But what was happening to all of us in 2008? Housing, right? This was the primary thing. Everybody was underwater on their mortgages, right? So why was this different from past recessions? Well, in past recessions, you could sell your house and move to where jobs were. But when everybody was underwater on their mortgages, you couldn't move, right? It was fundamentally different from past recessions in America. So the federal government, when Obama started in 2008, really looked at where people had to look at where people lived already and say, how do we help people where they are already? How do we create jobs where people are already? And that became something called the place-based initiatives across the entire government. And that, so that was really about how do we take places where people already live and make them great. So let's start, how we began thinking about that at the federal government was, where do we start with what we want? And there's this major study done by the Knight Foundation with Gallup called Soul of the Community. Have any of my professor nerds seen this one? Okay. It interviewed like 40,000 people across the country, and it said, why do you love living where you live? That's the key to unlocking how to build a good community, right? Is why somebody actually would want to live there. So what do you think the top 3 reasons are that somebody would want to live in a community? Let's just call them out. Affordable housing. Access to nature, jobs.
Time for life.
Time for life, school, what else? Sorry? Amenities? Family. Okay. We sort of got number 1, maybe. Number one reason. Across the whole country. I'm too far away. Gotta stop walking. Oops. So these are the things that we heard, right, that everyone said. These are the kind of very typical things that I hear when I go and talk across the country. Number 1 reason, social offerings. Number 1 reason why people want to live somewhere. Things to do. Number 2. I need a new battery. Sorry. Number 2, openness. I gave it away. Number 2, openness, feeling accepted. And number 3 reason why people actually love living somewhere, and this really blew us away at the National Endowment for the Arts, is aesthetics, the beauty of a place. So when I go and talk to a lot of folks, when we are having all these conversations, the majority of conversations in the country around how to build a good place are about this, right? Jobs, transit, environment, schools, businesses. And unfortunately, usually arts is like over here by itself, right? It's like, oh, that's our little arts project. Isn't that nice? Sorry, Amy. So what we've been trying to do at the endowment is change that game and to really put the arts at the same table. Not more important, at the table with all those other things as an essential part of building your community. You're really lucky to have someone like Amy here, not to pick on you because she's doing an amazing job of that. Can we get a round of applause? She's so awesome. So but not every community has an Amy. And this is what I think the mistake some communities make, right? Like after the Baltimore riots, the arts are the solution. Maybe the only solution. That's not the right answer. That's doing this, right? But it's about this. So when you put the arts into the place-based initiatives at the federal government, we made up a new term, and somebody already said it today. I was really proud to hear that came out. And we love new words in the federal government, right? And we called it creative placemaking. And this is was a frame for us to really kind of project work into the place-based initiatives around the arts. So this is a general definition of creative placemaking. Again, it's just when partners in communities come together around arts-based projects to make their communities better. It's the easiest way to describe it. So I promise this is I have 2 very wonky texty slides that I want to go through just to make this a little bit clear, and there's only 2 of them. So what can creative placemaking do, right? Like when you bring the arts to your community development table, what does it actually do? And this is just a framework for thinking about this. So number 1 thing everybody always knee-jerks to is economic development, right? We built the theater in the downtown. People had to go to dinner before that. The theater pays for dry cleaners and everything else that happens around that. So we understand that in the arts very well. But what I think a lot of communities don't understand is the role of the arts in seeding civic engagement. right? I think that we've heard a lot about that already, about people talking about there's really a role for us using cultural expression to get to understand each other better in communities and to engage people in planning processes. I mean, my God, who's been to a boring public meeting? If you've seen Parks and Recreation, I mean, that is like, their public meetings are better than the ones that I've been to. You know, I've seen fistfights break out. And we have funded things like artists, like theater artists, to run public meetings. It also helps really build resiliency. I mean, I'm slightly nervous based on the big article that came out that last year about the huge earthquake that's coming to Tacoma region. I hope people saw that, and I'm not speaking out to that. But, you know, after disaster, the arts really has a role too. And we've seen lots and lots of great examples of that. About, you know, that it's a way to really bring people back together and seed civic engagement and build resiliency, the social resiliency of the community, right? It's not just about the physical resilience of a place. It's not about that this building is earthquake proof. It's about the social resiliency of the community to recover from disaster, and the arts have a role in that. And of course, it also contributes to the quality of life. I mean, who doesn't want to live life without the arts? I certainly don't. I don't think anyone actually does. But then, so how does it do that, right? So you've got those things we know it can do. It doesn't do everything, but it does some things. How does it do that? Well, so we sort of created these categories, which is just kind of a way to think about it. So one of the things it does is anchoring, right? What we mean by that is that the sort of what you might knee-jerk to, like what this whole panel, some previous people on this panel were about. We put a museum in an old downtown department store. It anchored that space. It is a community anchor, both socially and economically. There's also activating, right? That's that's the social offerings part of this conversation, or the things to go do. Almost, unless you're doing sports, it probably has something to do with the arts. There's fixing, and that's in quotes because that's an extremely clumsy term, because that makes it sound like the community was broken in some way before you got there. But you know, the arts can certainly help reimagine public spaces, make things more beautiful. Remember, number 3 reason why people like living somewhere is because it's beautiful. We just get a round of applause for beauty? I mean, like, we act like it's this thing that is so precious that we don't all want, when it's really true that we really do want beauty in our lives, you know? And then planning, you know, like I said before, you can really use the arts in community planning processes in a serious way. So how did we pursue that? So we thought about how, you know, a lot of this work had been going on the ground for years, way before we made up this term creative placemaking. So we thought about, from the federal level, what's the right way for us to support this work, right? We have a very decentralized version of government in the United States, contrary to popular opinion. You know, it really is about how do we give you money and support you on the ground for what you're doing. So we started with the NEA's money, and I have us money there because it is your tax money. Thank you each for your 0.004th of a penny that you give to us every year at the NEA. Not even $1 a person. And that became the Our Town program, which I'll show you some examples from. But then we really wanted to do partnerships, because our funding is very small at the federal government. People refer to us as budget dust sometimes. So like if this little speck of budget dust on my finger is the NEA's budget, this room is like Housing and Urban Development's budget. That's sort of the scale of our agency. So our previous chairman, Rocco Landisman, had this idea, sort of like the cuckoo bird, which goes and plants its eggs in other places and then makes other people raise it. So we started sort of like planting arts eggs. So we've been working with all kinds of other federal agencies, and I won't talk about that right now, but the place-based initiatives that I described that all agencies are working on together, we can get into that in the Q&A if you're interested, because it's super wonky. But the arts, we've been at all those tables. You know, our chairman's sitting at the table with the chairman of HUD and the chairman of DOT and, Department of Transportation, Housing and Urban Development. You become an acronym crazy person when you move to DC. It's just like you assume everybody knows what DOT means. So we're at that table, and that's been really exciting, and there's been lots of good projects we've done together. And then this like amazing thing happened, because our former chairman used to be a theater producer and kind of knew how to raise money from a brick wall. He went to 14 major foundations and said, you know, we would really love for you guys to co-fund with us. And it worked. And over the past 10 years, 14 foundations have been putting in $15 million a year, new money, to support communities to do art-based work in a project called Art Place. It's not the NEA. People confuse Art Place and Our Town. Our Town's the NEA's program. Art Place is all foundation funded. We have a non-voting seat on their board. And they're doing incredible work, which we can get more into. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about Our Town. So this was a new program for the NEA, and what was really unique about it is that we put in a requirement that to even apply, and this was a guess that this might work, you had to have a local government partnering with an arts organization. And so we sent out the guidelines, nervously and thought, gosh, I hope we even get like 10 applications. And we were kind of overwhelmed with the response, which really showed to us that communities were already doing this work. And we had a lot of arts organizations calling us and going, I've never even spoken to my mayor's office or my government. I don't even know how to begin to apply to that. And we would say, you're a citizen in your community and an organization in your community, you should know your government. And we had a lot of mayor's offices calling us and saying, why are all these arts people calling us? And we were like, well, because they're your constituents. So we were excited about kind of the response we got to that, and surprised and shocked and delighted. And here's it's kind of a map of where we funded. We funded all over the country. This is my pointer's working. This is an Eskimo village on the Bering Strait. They can literally see Russia from their house. Native village of Mary's Igloo, 300 people, to, this is a town of 12 people in Colorado, Last Chance, Colorado. Not their last chance. Whoops, sorry. Wrong button. To Key West, the Acadian portion of Maine up here, to Puerto Rico. We've been in all 50 states and in 2 territories, DC and Puerto Rico. So all sizes communities are doing this. All types of communities. When you work at the federal government, you realize what an incredible, diverse, insanely interesting country this is. And everybody's stepping up and doing this work already and doing it in very serious ways. And you have Amy who's doing it, who has gotten Our Town grants and has done great work here. So let's look at some pictures. So this is Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. What was Bethlehem famous for? It's steel, right? So this is the steel stacks, the famous steel stacks that have closed. So this is a huge site for redevelopment. This is a town of about 80,000 people. And half of the redevelopment site was a casino, whatever works. And the other half is actually this incredible new arts center. This is like a Levitt Pavilion, and you can't really see here, but the steel stacks are up there, and it's like a post-industrial Red Rocks. It's so cool. And they built facing that Levitt Pavilion. This is a jazz cafe, music center, and independent film center. And this tiny town brings in 2 million people a year for music festivals that they have on this site now. The local PBS station just moved onto the site. This is their new space. And the NEA ended up actually funding this piece of public art, which is, I think it's a 4-story tall piece of steel that up the sides of it are written the names of all the famous buildings that were built with the steel from Bethlehem Steel. So Statue of Liberty, Empire State Building. And as you've noticed, it lights on fire. So can you imagine the public approval process to get a piece of public art that lights on fire approved? These are some stalwarts here. Really amazing project to take a peek at, and a real kind of looking at what their local asset was and how the arts might be a piece of the puzzle in bringing back economic development to this community. And sort of continuing to talk about that anchoring theme, artist live workspace and affordable live workspace is really important, especially nowadays with the sort of extreme housing costs in most of our strong market cities in America. I think it's a dangerous trap to fall into everywhere it's becoming expensive, because there's definitely strong market cities and weak market cities in this country. But in strong market cities, affordable artist housing is very important. And so this is an example of a smaller community in Hamilton, Ohio. This is now 36 units of affordable live workspace. That's pretty sexy. Do you want to see that one again? Before, after. And there will be galleries on the ground floor of this building in downtown Hamilton. This is a very similar project in New Haven, Connecticut to your Spaceworks project, which is about giving creative entrepreneurs space, connecting the dots between empty retail spaces and creative entrepreneurs to create new permanent businesses and fill downtown empty retail spaces. This is a great project in Long Beach, California. You might have heard that California has a lot of parking lots. It's true. The rumor's true. And in Long Beach, what this the city really recognized is that there's a lack of access to cultural opportunities across many of the neighborhoods, and especially a lot of the lower income communities of color. And we should talk about gentrification, but there's actually some real misunderstandings about what's been going on in some of those communities. I think it's 75% of the low-income communities of color in the country, there has been zero gentrification. Zero. Nothing has changed in those communities, and that is a problem. So cultural access is one of those issues. And so what they said is, we don't need performance spaces. We're California, the sun's always out. We're going to find key empty lots out in these neighborhoods and bring art to them. This is a gospel concert. There were like incredible hip hop things and new media things, and it was really cool. But it was a really smart look at what's going on here. Let's do a different version of cultural access, right? As opposed to, you need to come to our buildings in the downtown. We're going to bring it out to you. I love this project in Nashville. What's Nashville famous for? Country music, right? So the mayor really wanted to do something different and say that it's not just country music, but it's all music. And so the Nashville Opera came to us with this awesome program, and they said, look, every country music song is an opera, right? It's a story. And those country music writers they write one Taylor Swift song or like a third writer on a Taylor Swift song, and they're bazillionaires, and they don't have that much work to do. So they wanted to put, I'm not kidding, this is just the truth of the situation. And so, they're like sitting by their pool. And they decided that they wanted to give a chance for those writers to write longer form than a 3-minute song. And so they're running a competition amongst those writers in Nashville and the other talent. The Juilliard level talent that's in Nashville is insane. And they said, what we're going to do is we're going to have a competition to do small operettas. So people are producing 10 to 15-minute operas. And then we're going to perform them in the country honky-tonks. And on the back of a flatbed truck, which they're going to drive around town, just like in the Lot Project, to bring it to communities that don't have it. So you're sort of noticing what I'm saying about a lot of these is it's always arts and, right? It's not just an arts project. It's about arts and environment and restoration and economic development. But it's also about the place itself. You could not do this project anywhere but Nashville, right? And everywhere, arts is a natural occurring resource in every community, right? And you've got your own thing going on here. I would wish I had more time to figure out, and see a lot more of what it is. But it's about who you are as a place itself and being super proud of that and using the arts to amplify that in an interesting way. Okay, so I love this project. These are people, this is Liz Lerman dance troupe who you may have heard of. These are folks doing an interpretive dance of their hopes for the reconstruction of a local bus rapid transit line next door. So this is a dance company working with a transit authority. And this is a public meeting. They're collecting data here about what people's hopes and dreams are. And I also just want to be the godfather of this amazing girl because she's just so cool. So, okay, come find me. Just kidding. Okay, but it's not just for even mid-sized communities. This can happen in rural too. So has anybody been to the Wisconsin Dells, which is sort of like oh cool, I never see that many hands. I'd love to go, which is sort of like a Las Vegas of how would you describe it? It's kind of like that. But just outside of the Dells, there's a very rural county where there's lots of small farms, right? These are not big industrial farms, these are small farms. And there was a group of artists living there. And they said, we really want to do something with the farmers. So they got together with them and they said, what do you guys need? And they said, well, we need people to come and buy our produce. We need more farmers markets. So they put together this 2-week arts festival. Well, they did 2 things. First, they started working with the farmers to use artists to redesign their roadside food stands. So they have these amazing roadside food stands now, which I don't have a photo of, sorry. Go look it up. It's called Warm Farm. But then they said during a 2-week period, we're going to do public art actually out on the farms themselves and teach people about food and bring people to come see public art out on the farms. So this is like a 20-foot wide frame that you can kind of drive by. It's one of the pieces. This is those are not actors. That is a Mennonite family coming and visiting, and they're extremely rad outfits. And those are huge boots they're very quite far away from them. That was a piece of public art on the farms. And farmers have gotten super into this, and they're making their own art now. There's performances out on the farms themselves. This is last year. This year, I don't have a photo of it. There was a performance. There was like a totally redesigned tractor that had an opera singer up on it in a corn husk dress singing, which was really cool. These people are amazing. And I want to tell this story because I think it's a very well-rounded story about how a smaller community can work with the arts to actually deal with a multitude of issues that they have there. So this is Wallace Simpson. He just passed away. He's 92 years old. And he created these crazy, gigantic whirligigs. This is about 200 feet tall. And he had about 400 of them in his front yard. And so he's world famous. You will see these all over the world now that I've shown them to you. It's told you who he is. Considered was named a national treasure by the president. Wallace was before he passed away. You must know who he is. So the city of Wilson, North Carolina, used to be a big tobacco town. And as we know, the tobacco industry has gone down quite a bit. And so they have this downtown area, a park that was surrounded by these old tobacco drying bins. And I'm just going to show you. I think I've got a photo of it. So they said, we want to really restore these pieces and create a park, sort of like a Watts Towers kind of park, like a really important place where people can come and see the whirligigs. But they also needed to really be restored because they were kind of in terrible shape. So that's itself a good story, right? Like they've taken this artwork, they're making it much more public. It used to be way out on his farm. And all of these buildings you see here have all now been sold and are being redeveloped, which would have been a great economic development story. But the really cool thing they did was they said, we are going to use the actual art restoration as a way to provide jobs to people who are unemployed in our community. So they took all these engineers, and people who had been working on repairing cars and things, and gave them new skill sets in art restoration. And I'm hoping this will be the good end of this story. Because they've developed, it was only 15 jobs, but that was 15 people who didn't have a job before, right? And this is a relatively small community. They're now in conversations with the Smithsonian Folk Art Restoration Center and creating a permanent art restoration center here. So these people have permanent jobs, which would just be so awesome. So you can clap. That'd be awesome. So you can do this in a multi-layered way that's beyond just what you see. You can do the human side of it too, is what I like about that story. We also believe in just kind of training artists, and helping people be better entrepreneurs. This is the Arts Incubator of the Rockies. It's a website and a program that's about providing business training to artists. We're also super nerds for data. Are you enjoying these examples? I could blow through them more quickly. Yes? Okay, good. So this is a crazy interesting project in Pennsylvania that pulls all different kinds of, this is for my planning nerds in the audience. Can I show who's a planning student or a design person? Okay, there's some, good. Everyone else, take a nap, check your phone. This allows you to pull down data about cultural organizations and investment and all different kinds of data layers. So here we're looking at National Endowment for the Arts grants, putting myself up here, and ethnic diversity status. So the purple means ethnically diverse neighborhoods. And the green dots are the NEA grants. We're not doing so good, right? This was really informative to us. There's organizations and folks we could be funding out in some of these other neighborhoods that we don't have relationships with. This changed our relationship with Philadelphia, just this simple one version of this map. And this is some of the power of data. And there's amazing things happening with this data in Philadelphia. You should give these folks a ring. Okay, does anybody know what Art Prize is? One person. Good. So Grand Rapids community, post-industrial community in Michigan has a population of about 180,000. And this happened through kind of a very large individual donor wanted to do this. So Art Prize is this thing where over 2 weeks in the downtown and now out in much of the neighborhoods, any artist for $75, it's not free, can submit to be curated to then show your art somewhere. It could be outside, could be on a sidewalk, could be in a museum. But over those 2 weeks, 300,000 people come and see this. And they vote on what their favorite piece of art is. And the artist that wins gets $250,000. So Really cool project. I encourage you to look at it, go check it out. This is 10,000 people. This is one of the art pieces waiting in the downtown for 400,000 paper airplanes to be thrown off the top of the buildings down at them. It didn't win, which I couldn't believe, but that's a social offering, right? Let's go see the paper airplanes come down. We also believe very strongly at the NEA in funding good design. I'm sort of showing you only half of my work, which is really about the role of arts. We have a whole design program that just funds what's the role of good design in communities. So this is in Detroit in the Midtown area, which is the most booming area right now. Yes, only primarily serving white millennials. Where's my person who said that? Thank you for saying that comment, because they're very complex things in Detroit. But Detroit's big, and so there's a lot of empty space between buildings, and this was kind of a reimagining of how they might use the empty spaces between the buildings, not just the street, in an interesting way. This is in Shreveport, Louisiana. Someone burned down their local arts council. This is their local arts council being burnt to the ground. How's that for xenophobia? And they said, you know what, we're not just going to rebuild where we are. There's a part of town that we think has a lot of potential, and we're going to see if we can move there and do something special. So they moved to this old firehouse and created a new working artist center, not just a cultural center, for artists in this, what's called the Iron Triangle there. And now a lot of the different buildings are being bought up for different art things. But they do a lot of it's still quite an abandoned area of town. So they did a lot of temporary art stuff to kind of bring people in and make people feel comfortable. I mean, any student of Jane Jacobs knows more eyes on the street makes people feel more comfortable, leads to more economic development, leads to better things for the community there. So this is one of the public art projects. It's quite a famous artist you might have seen around the world. They built some of these structures, which the state skateboarding kids just went crazy for. And I think I loved your example from South Carolina where there was the piece of public art people just playing with. I mean, the last thing we want at the endowment is for people to sort of treat things so preciously, right? Especially if it's a piece of public art. It should be interactive. People want to interact now. Our society is so different than it was even 10 years ago. People are craving to get off these phones sometimes and just have a face-to-face or something to do. I love my phone, though. Don't take it away. And then I'll just show you this one last example, which was nearby here in Portland. This was a really amazing organization. I don't think they're around anymore. That was doing work trying to make the people who lived in affordable housing feel like their culture was represented and important. So what they did is they went to a lot of the affordable housing residents and had professional photographers take pictures of their families, which they then gave to them as these works of art. So it was this amazing process of both validating people's culture and giving people permanent, beautifully produced permanent pieces. So this is to me, kind of one of the connecting projects, really helping us recognize the value in each of our own cultures. And I don't have great photos, but people came dressed up and they're these, you don't even realize how many amazingly talented people there are out there who have a little art form on the side that they've carried down with them from their grandmother, but they would never call themselves an artist, right? So frustrating to me that someone sings in church is oh, I'm not an artist, or has a fiber art that they do at home. They're oh, I'm not an artist. That's just I'm just weaving. Why do we separate ourselves that way from the arts? It's so dumb. I don't get it. Why are you so dumb? Why are we so dumb? Why am I so dumb? Okay, so you can see more of those examples on our website that we created called Exploring Our Town. I'll say that again. It's called Exploring Our Town. You can go to www.arts.gov, which is our website at the NEA, arts.gov, but it's just easier to Google Exploring Our Town because this is 15 clicks into our 3,000-page website. You can see more examples, and you can sort them, and you can also see a lot of lessons learned about what we asked the project managers. How do you guys do this? Amy has, the Tacoma Art Museum project that we funded here is up on here, so you guys can go check that one out too. And Amy gave us great quotes about how she did it. So I'm just going to wrap up by talking about the newest initiative at the NEA. This is just 3 seconds. So when the chairman came in, she was really thrilled about all the arts and place-based work. But she was like, well, why aren't we talking about the arts connecting to everything, right? And that's because we know that the creativity does connect. We have just seen it going on everywhere, that artists are they're doing residencies at law schools. There's all kinds of arts and food stuff going on. There's arts and science stuff going on. So we created this new program called Creativity Connects. But we're not getting ahead of ourselves. We're not pretending that we know what's actually going on out there. So we're doing two things. We're doing a major research study looking at what do artists and designers need to succeed right nowadays. So that will be an update. There hasn't been a study done since 2003 looking at what the needs of artists are in America. Remember, these phones came along since then. That's kind of changed the way we all work. So that study has a very public that study has a very public face to it, a website we just launched called Creativz, creativz.us, which we all encourage you to give us feedback on. So this is a research website. Nothing's set yet. And so there's blog posts that are on here that are sort of talking about what we think is going on in America right now. There's one by the head of Games for Change, which is an organization that supports video games doing social change projects. There's one by Laura Zabel from Springboard for the Arts talking about how our whole society, all the big societal changes that are going on right now is affecting the arts in the same way it's affecting everything else. So just you can come be a troll and just tell us whatever you want to. We want that. Please tweet about this, do whatever you like. We're still in research phase. We are trying to learn about what it means to be successful as a creative person in America right now. And the second piece of that is we have launched a new grant program too called Creativity Connects, which similar to Our Town will require partnerships between arts organizations and science organizations. So I said, when we first got started in doing this, we just did a quick scan of what we were already funding at the NEA, and America is amazing. America is great. There's just so much incredible stuff going on out there already, and we're hoping through the grant program and through this research report we'll kind of surface some of that stuff, and then help other funders look at how they might support it going forward. So we're kind of just researching this all right now, but I will tell you there is incredible stuff going on out there. So why, you might ask, why the heck are you guys doing all this, right? Why aren't you just funding, the local symphony or the local theater organization? Well, that is actually 95% of what we do at the NEA. That's 95% of our funding. Well, we also really do believe that the arts and design have a role in making our society better. And it really comes back to all of us and our collective future, right? We're interested in what the next 50 years, the NEA turned 50 years old this year. What do the next 50 years look like? And we really believe strongly that creativity has an unbelievably important role to make life better for all of us. That's it, thanks so much. What? Sorry, what? Yes, please. Please ask me questions. I'm your public servant. It's your chance to yell at me. I know those cookies are good, but you can break away from them and come over. Yes.
Hello.
Hi, thanks.
How have you been working with the military?
So we have a couple really great military programs. One is, I think, was mentioned before. It's called Blue Star Museums, which asks museums to provide free admission between Memorial Day and Labor Day to active service member families. And so that's a great program. We also have, and Congress just gave us more money to do this. We actually got an increase this year in our budget, yay. And it was specifically to fund our military program. So we have a program in Walter Reed Hospital where we work with the most troubled PTSD suffering soldiers. And it's an art therapy program. And it is serious. And for some of these soldiers, if you hear them talk about it, art is the one thing that has worked with them. They loved it so much that we're expanding to other forts and other places. And it is an absolutely amazing program. So we're really excited about it. And we got, I think, $2 million more, which will be partly distributed to the states to increase our capacity to do all of that. Yes.
So I wanted to share a story about how art impacted in a major way the life of a young woman I was mentoring in Seattle's South End, and then ask a question. So I I served as a mentor for many, many years, but this child came to me at the age of 14 and was flunking 5 out of 6 classes. I didn't know why, and so I spent a lot of time with her at school. We were riding the ferry one time, and she was sitting across from me and just doing something on a 3-ring binder. And I said, "What are you doing?" She said, "Nothing." And then it turned out she was doing anime, comic book art. But not just like 1 page or 2 pages. These were like 3-ring binders. And so I realized that she had talent, and she had not shown it to anyone. She had at home another 3-ring binders. And so because I didn't know anything about it, I found others who could help me help her. We enrolled her in a workshop. And the workshop instructor said, "This girl has talent, so why don't you enroll her in this other one?" Which I did. And to make a very long story short, she went from flunking 5 out of 6 classes to making it an honor roll in 2 years, and in 4 years making it off to college. And I do think that just the recognition of her art, her talent, and the ability to express it and show it, I think made a huge difference.
Yeah, validation is very important.
Yeah. So my question was whether the NEA has done any studies relating those two.
Yeah, there was a major study that came out last year. Oh my God, arts education is not my forte, so you'll have to forgive me. I don't remember the name of the author, that basically showed that students that have access to the arts do better in almost every single category, period. Like, it was a major, undeniable study. And so it is something we've been working with to try to enrich our arts education programs. There's a great program called Turnaround Arts that's out of the President's Committee on Arts and Humanities, which is another one of the cultural agencies. There's lots of cultural agencies. That does full arts immersion in some of the most troubled schools in the country. They bring in a big visiting artist. They do full arts immersion across all the classes for the entire year. And then the turnaround that has happened in those schools is absolutely astounding. You could go check out that data too. It's just, it's almost unbelievable that they've gotten the numbers they've gotten. I mean, it's hard to believe it's been that successful, but it has. It works. Yes, sir.
Jason, thanks for being here in that presentation. Great work by the NEA. I'd like you to dive in a little more deeply on the creative placemaking in suburbs, particularly. We have a couple communities here who are trying to leverage placemaking, performing arts center, community center type places within difficult environments. One of them is Federal Way. They're building a building there in the middle of a series of strip malls, completely hidden away from everything. What advice might you have for them, and or where have you seen successes or failures in suburban creative placemaking?
Sure. If you're talking specifically about the building of cultural institutions, I mean, cultural institutions are a piece of good city design. So there's nothing special about what good city design is for a cultural institution versus good city design for anything else. It's a piece of the puzzle, right? So I think it's quite fine for them to. We've seen a lot of success of cultural institutions being in kind of the strip mall environment. Because it's really, really, really hard to change that physical environment in a meaningful way. And if that's just where people are going to have access to the cultural institutions, that's fine. I mean, I can't say that, I grew up in the suburbs. Like, I can't say that that's, if people want to live there and that's what they want, it is a free country, they can live there, right? Like, I like the suburbs, I grew up in it. And so I feel like it's more for that kind of organization that's in that kind of urban environment. It's about, are they serving the right kind of audience that they're hoping to serve? Are they doing the right things to connect with that audience to make sure that people know that they're there and come to them? And so I think it's more about that kind of stuff than necessarily having to making it the cultural institution's responsibility to solve the larger urban planning issues in that community. It'd be about helping them be at the table. So I would suggest maybe the cultural institutions should take the time to go to city planning zoning meetings, or maybe run for this, be on the school board or be on the planning board in that community. I mean, one of the things that cultural organizations and artists don't do nearly enough, and my designers and artists in the field here, is public service, right? So many of those zoning boards that are making the decisions that you don't like are positions that you could have if you took the time to do it. You know, you have to step up in America. And so you don't get to just sit on your heels and make change happen here. And so that might be the kind of thing that, I don't want to get to the specifics of that exact environment because I don't know it well enough, but you get what you ask for, you know what I mean? So I also might recommend that if they want to rethink the site around it, that they work with one of the local design schools and do some design charrettes and come up with some kind of new plans or ideas or innovative things they might be able to do. And then, you know, take that work to the local zoning commission and fight for some of the, you know, it's a long process to fix some of those problems. They can apply for a grant to do the design, the design work on the ground. Yes, over here, sorry.
If you want a challenging situation or challenging place, I was thinking about people who are homeless. And I'm very much aware that many people are one job away from poverty. Many people are not very far away from losing their homes, if they have underwater mortgages or whatever. And also, a large percentage of people who are homeless have multiple disabilities, including often mental illness and or co-occurring disorders. So you're talking about a population that's very diverse, and it sounds as many people write off all people who are homeless without differentiating certain individuals who have tremendous potential, including, I suspect, artistic potential. And it would be very interesting if the city of, I'm on the Commission on Disabilities, and people with all kinds of disabilities, whether they're neurological or sensory, whether they're blind, whether they're deaf, whatever. Certainly there is artistic potential among people with disabilities who are young, and also among those who are rather old. And I think that, I'm not talking just about homeless people, I'm talking about people who are in communities, but my connection to...
Yeah. Sorry.
Got it.
What's the question?
The question basically is, can you envision the National Endowments for the Arts or encouraging or serving as a catalyst for cultural institutions and also for city government, such as Tacoma City Government, Pierce County Government, to consider whether there might be some place for an arts project in a venue which serves people who are homeless?
Absolutely. So there's lots of that stuff going on in the country already. There's lots of good examples. Just off the top of my head, and I know it's one of the biggest cities in the country and may not be as replicable, but the Department of Cultural Affairs in New York City has a big relationship with the Department of Homeless Services, and they do tons of arts programming, visual and performing arts in the homeless centers there. And I mean, will the arts solve the bigger problem of homelessness in the country? No, that's one of those things where, remember I had the arts like over all those other things, like that's a mistake to think that. Does it have a role to play in enriching everyone's life, including people who might be homeless? Yes. So, I mean, the issue of homelessness is so gigantic and infuriating. The arts have a role to play, but it's not going to solve it. So that's how I would answer that. But, so yeah, it's happening. Yes, sir.
When I hear a good joke, I like to tell it perfectly.
Okay.
How did you introduce that question about the National Endowment of the Arts at the beginning of the presentation? Remember how you asked the question and nobody had an answer for that?
I asked what we are. Oh, when I said, I'm here from the federal government, I'm here to help. Is that
no?
Because that was not a joke. I was quoting Ronald Reagan. So I don't know why you guys laughed.
Well,
you're still laughing. It's pissing me off.
Just ask the question about, do you know what the National Endowment of the Arts like that?
Yeah, I guess so.
Anyway, okay, thanks anyway.
Okay. Sorry. Yes, sir.
Hi, my name is Al Radcliffe. Just north of here, there's a Civic Plaza, which is dead. Are there examples that you could give us of arts programs or activities that could revive a dead Civic Plaza?
Yeah, there's tons. I mean,
a range of examples. 4.
Go to our website, Exploring Our Town.
4.
Oh gosh. Well, in Providence, Rhode Island, the Kennedy Plaza, which was basically just like a bus stop in downtown Providence, Rhode Island, they had designers come in and completely rethink the whole space to be much more of a civic commons, and they created a stage, and they do a bunch of programming on it. So I would look at we funded all of that. I would look at the Kennedy Plaza example in Rhode Island. There's a great organization, I'm going to punt a little bit. There's a great organization called Project for Public Spaces and another one called the Design Trust for Public Space in New York, both grantees of our agency, who their whole point of their organizations are to make better public spaces, and that includes using the arts as part of that puzzle. So I would definitely look those guys up. How was that for a punt? And call Amy, she's got stuff she can make that plaza better with. Pay for programming, right? Run a Kickstarter campaign. Yes, sir.
Greetings. Expanding, hopefully, what you presented to us, your goddaughter that you hope to find, or she'll find you, and that example of capturing sentiment or data for the planners in that community engagement setting. Could you expand on that important process of using arts to capture data in that community engagement space?
Sure. There's been a multitude of different communities. Flint, Michigan actually did this before the big water crisis, which is a national disaster. They were redoing their community plan. Flint was actually redoing its first zoning and community plan in 50 years, which was kind of insane. And so they actually put artists and residents in neighborhoods, in community centers in neighborhoods, to work with people in the community to collect the data that the city wanted around certain topics. So the city might want to know more around, is the bus system working? Well, then they would maybe do like a theater performance about busing, not that kind of busing, like the bus system. And I'm making this up, I'm not exactly sure if that's what happened, but that was one way that they did it, is by a lot of folks are putting artists out into the neighborhoods themselves in kind of like 3-month residencies, so they can actually get to know and make people comfortable. And so much of collecting good data is about building trust with people too. I mean, I don't think people come to a public meeting ready to share what they really think about something that is in a way that's actually necessarily that helpful. But if you build that true trust and get to the kind of deeper place where they're truly comfortable with sharing what they really envision as the future of their community. I mean, the arts are great at breaking through those walls, but that takes time and attention. So I think that's where most of those projects have worked. I mean, you can imagine how much fun it was for everybody to do that big dance project about a transit thing. That probably broke down so many walls and made people so much more open to really talking about what the key issues were for them. Okay, I think that's it. Thank you guys so much. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you, Jason, for a wonderful talk and also for interaction from the audience. Thank you for being here. Hopefully this is the beginning of a longer conversation in the community and with us and including us. And we look forward to seeing you in future lectures. Thank you so much for your attention. Thank you for your participation. And thank you for carrying on a great mission, which is to create a livable community. And when you get to a perfect definition, just let me know. Thank you very much.